That memo from the interview of Eric Davis and Thomas Wilson alliterates to the fact that the military has interstellar craft, retrieved craft that can fly through interstellar space, our atmosphere, underwater, and through dimensions.
Wow.
This is a 15-page, single-spaced memo from a high government scientist talking with J2, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he's naming names, programs, and all sorts of processes that the military is involved in. Admiral Thomas Wilson's whole reticence about this program, he says he came across this program that literally was back engineering UFOs, and he couldn't believe there was no government oversight, no White House oversight, or military or even congressional oversight to these programs. So obviously these are unacknowledged special access programs that are literally funded with, like you said, billions and trillions of dollars. And well, here's the thing, you got to keep this in perspective. If you had a problem like this, that was probably the biggest question on our planet, are we alone in the universe? How much money would you want to spend, be able to spend, to try to figure out what the heck is going on? That's one thing to keep in mind, because this is the biggest issue we've all been dealt with here on this planet.
Greetings and welcome to the Vortex. I'm your host, Daniel Allen Jones, and I am very honored to be here with Michael W. Hall.
It's my pleasure, Daniel.
Yeah, we've been connected for a little while online, and I've seen that you've been around to a few different places that we're going to talk about here in a moment, but I'm glad to finally meet you here in person in Edinburg, Texas, where we had the UFO Festival. This is an annual event. We're going to have the conference later today, but we're going to go through a few things that you'll be discussing in your presentation, dealing with the Wilson Memo, which is a really big deal for those who have been studying and following along with this UFO research and the leak of the century, as we've been kind of under the impression of. And so we'll also talk a little bit about the Disclosure Trust that you've got going on. So before we get into all of these different things, share with us a little bit about your beginnings to all of this, what maybe got you involved, if you've had something that kind of springboarded you into this subject, or what it was for you that really sparked your interest.
Good point, good question. First of all, Daniel, thank you for all the years of work that you've been doing here on this festival and others. I know you're a busy man.
Well, I'm glad to. It's a great event.
It is, and this is the first one kind of opening back up after the the lockdown and stuff. So it's nice to see people again and get out there and converse with the other speakers as well and see the folks. I got started in the paranormal just as a young kid. I think probably the Superman comic books got me started, those kinds of things. Then later on, the Eric Von Däniken, dime novels, and those kinds of stuff about the ancient aliens. I went to law school, but I had always been interested in the paranormal and UFOs well before then. So when I graduated from law school, Southwestern University in California, the oldest private law school in California, I just immediately started helping my friends in the community, the researchers and the investigators that were into the field already, because every once in a while you have legal issues come up, contracts, as you well know, to be reviewed, and all sorts of potential things come out for disclosure, NDAs, and those kinds of documents, and every once in a while there'll be a strange case that they need to consult on as well. And the ultimate for me was when one of my clients over the years, as I've represented folks like Grant Cameron and Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center, and Dr. Richard Haynes from NARCAP, the pilot reporting agency. The big shock of my life was January 2nd of 2019, I get an encrypted text from Grant Cameron, my client. And it's short. It goes, Michael, I have a situation. I'm about ready to drop a major UFO bomb, and I needed to run it by you as the paranormal lawyer.
That's right. So that's one of the things that you've become known as the paranormal lawyer. With the work that you've done, I think that's a pretty incredible title to be able to kind of be recognized as. So.
It is. It's like the only one. If you look up that term, pretty much you're going to find my name and the stuff that I've done over the last 3 decades helping people in the fields of ufology and paranormal and all that stuff. But when I get a text, an encrypted text from a client like Grant Cameron, this is the guy literally that broke all the amazing UFO stories of all the presidents of the United States, what they knew about UFOs. He started out with the Charlie Red Star sighting in Canada in 1975. So when he comes up and says, I'm about ready to drop a major UFO, I'm going, okay, what is it? Well, long story short, it's the Admiral Wilson smoking gun UFO memo of the century, as coined that by Richard Dolan, which was a document that came from the Edgar Mitchell estate, because Edgar Mitchell was on the board of directors of NIDS, National Institute of Discovery Science, along with lots of other folks. Robert Bigelow, of course, owned the company, and they had commissioned Dr. Eric Davis, very famous insider scientist, to go and interview Thomas Wilson, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, J2, second in command of all of the military intelligence departments, about what he knew about the crash retrieval programs of UFOs. And he put them off for quite a while, and eventually they got together. And the long story short, I'll let you, get into the details that you want later and whatever else we want to talk about. But that memo from the interview of Eric Davis and Thomas Wilson alliterates to the fact that the military has interstellar craft, retrieved craft that can fly through interstellar space, our atmosphere, underwater, and through dimensions.
Wow.
This is a 15-page, single-spaced memo from a high government scientist talking with J2, Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he's naming names, programs, and all sorts of processes that the military is involved in. And so it took Grant Cameron and myself 6 months to vet this thing before we even got to a point where we were comfortable telling people that it existed.
Right. I think this is something that, some people caught wind of, or they heard a few things about, that maybe there was this leak of information regarding the government's awareness or in some way participation and involvement with some of these unacknowledged special access programs. And I think that's one of the things that, if you look into this, Wilson seemed to have an inclination for, maybe some form of getting involved with trying to find out more information, even though maybe he denied doing this. If you start looking into this, it seems like he was intrigued by this and wanted to know more, and may have been stonewalled and said, you don't have a need to know,
right,
even though you have whatever clearances you've got, this is not going to be something you're going to get access to. So with a lot of these different programs potentially still out there, and maybe ones that haven't been active for some time, it seems like there's a lot that may never get out. But some of these things do get leaked every once in a while, and it gets into the hands of some people who they don't really know what to do with it. They don't know how to vet it, things like that. So when this came in, like you said, around 2019, it became more viral than a lot of different things in this area. When we talk about UFOs, people generally think Roswell and Area 51, which is something that is just more in pop culture. But when it comes to the reality that the military does have a vested interest in this, we need people who can really look into this and kind of go back and corroborate it, do what we can to identify the people, the figures behind it. As you mentioned, Eric Davis, Dr. Eric Davis isn't really too far from here, over in Austin, just a few hours. And these are tangible people that we need to see what we can do to actually get a hold of and find ways to make sense of this type of incident. Because if we look into what some people have asked about Eric Davis, it seems at this point he's really not entertaining much involvement with that whole thing now. What is your position on that? Do you think that that seems to be indicative that maybe he was told to keep that on the down low, or maybe just not to acknowledge this at all, or what do you think?
Well, I tell you what, Dr. Eric Davis is probably one of the more intelligent hominids on this planet. I mean, he really is, as you well know. And so I think he knows how to play the game. There's certain things that he can say and certain things he's not going to go there. But I'll tell you, the big revelation that he made a couple of months ago, which astonished me, was that he actually confirmed that he gave high-level government consultations with the Senate Intelligence Committee members, confirming that they, the military and the government now, has retrieved crashed craft that are extraterrestrial, not made of this world, was his specific. He actually said that. Oh. So it seems to me that he's been given at least some authorization to say a few things now that kind of back up what the memo says, and it was his notes that are in the memo.
Right, and this is something that we can still look into. I think it's a really powerful mention that we've had this technology for a while. This isn't just modern, but this goes back, and this could reveal that other programs, other agencies have access to this. And a lot of it is about intelligence gathering agencies and corporations possibly embedded within them so as to avoid legal loopholes, financial loopholes. What are your thoughts on how that works when we have to have accountability for some of these programs? A lot of people on the more conspiratorial end consider that there's a lot of black money involved that's not being accounted for. We're missing trillions of dollars, and this money could be used for these black budget operations. What is your position on how this works with what we are supposed to think is a legal protocol, and then maybe what's taking place kind of in the shadows of all of this?
That was Admiral Thomas Wilson's whole reticence about this program. He says he came across this program that literally was back engineering UFOs, and he couldn't believe there was no government oversight, no White House oversight, or military or even congressional oversight to these programs. So obviously these are unacknowledged special access programs that are literally funded with, like you said, billions and trillions of dollars. And well, here's the thing, you got to keep this in perspective. If you had a problem like this, that was probably the biggest question on our planet, are we alone in the universe? How much money would you want to spend, be able to spend, to try to figure out what the heck is going on? That's one thing to keep in mind, because this is the biggest issue we've all been dealt with here on this planet. I always say there is one point in the history of any given planet in the universe where the inhabitants of that planet eventually find out they are not alone in the universe. That only happens once. I believe that happened to us on this planet on June 6th of 2019, when the Admiral Wilson Memo was released anonymously on Twitter. I think that's when it happened on our planet.
That's a really profound moment to consider. Even though most people probably have no idea what that is or what it could imply, it's going to affect us in a way that should shift our perspective on what's possible about life, about our own existence here on Earth, and then what lies beyond that. And what we need to be prepared for, what standard society must now accept as normal in the future, because that's how I think we're going to make progress, is once we normalize the idea that life is present and that we're not alone. As you're saying, there are plenty of people throughout the government, the military, and pilots, civilians, all of these law enforcement that they're compelled to say that, I've experienced something, which gives them the indication that we're not alone. And I think that the more we provide platforms for those people in a secure way that's not going to ridicule them and make them feel like they're going to lose their job, their career, family and friends, that it'll help to bring more stories forward, because we can only think about all the other Wilson memos that are out there that we have no idea about, all the different things that have had some kind of trail of breadcrumbs that might still be tangible for us to follow up with, that could give us more insight about not just this particular group and incident, but all the ones that are possibly out there and maybe even still going, because we've had releases with the Pentagon talking about some of their groups, and those are just the ones that have been publicized.
Yes.
There's any number of things still happening behind closed doors, and I think it's important that if we have people that are aware of this, that they can have an opportunity to come forward safely. And you also offer what you were referring to as the disclosure trust, and how that might help people accomplish this. So how is that going to work when people have something really dire they feel they don't want to just outright just tell everybody and then suddenly they've disappeared? What is that going to be like?
Well, I've over the 3 decades of law practice, I've developed an estate planning tool that I've been able to turn into like a whistleblower trust, where people, if they've got some information, artifacts, documentation, whatever that they want to make sure that gets out eventually, you know, a lot of times their family members have no idea what they have, or even no interest at all. And so it kind of goes by the wayside when they die. They can actually fund this material into a, what I call a disclosure trust, name a trustee of their own choosing and stuff, and give them directions on what would happen. Either in the future, just 5 years down the road, you want to wait a while, disclose it then, or upon my death, for instance, how many years after my death or whatever. You give directions to your trustee on how to do that. And here's the cool thing about this, Daniel. This document, once you create a document like this, it's almost like a disincentive to mess around with you, because what we do is we publicize the fact immediately that this client has a disclosure trust. We're not going to tell you what's in it, but if anything ever happens to him, immediately it's publicized around the world. So it really kind of gives you a little bit of, you know, a feeling that you're protected a bit, you know, with the information that you're trepidatious about.
Right. I think it's really important for people to be able to utilize that in the case that they have sensitive information that could otherwise jeopardize a lot of their life. And so,
and their family as well.
That's a really important part of what whistleblowers can do, is provide us with information that they have from the inside, and bring it forward in a way that they know is going to be a safe way for them to just get the word out about it. And, you know, with some of the things that we've seen throughout the years, from previous alleged whistleblowers and stories and all these things, something like this could have really been useful in cases where we would otherwise made several years of progress in a time where, you know, people didn't really have access to YouTube or the internet or social media or Twitter, all these things where, or Reddit, and all the ways that people can leak information now. It's like you can do it anonymously, you can do it all these different things, but now with something like this, people have the opportunity to come forward and be able to kind of utilize your service in a way that they feel protected. So for those who are interested in finding out more about how they can get a hold of you and require any kind of service like this, where can they go? What can they do to get hold of you?
You know, it's real easy to do that on Facebook, for instance. They can go to Michael W. Hall on Facebook, and I've got all my contact information there. And I'll contact them. I'm only a text away, so or if they have any, they want to call, we can do an interview over the phone or whatever they'd like.
Great, Michael. I really appreciate you offering this service. It's an awesome opportunity to be able to have you here in person, of course, and I really appreciate all the different media that you've been doing. You've been traveling around. You even went to Area 51 when they did the storm
last summer. That was awesome.
It's an incredible part of documenting the public interest in this phenomenon, because it doesn't just take place through researchers or those who are hardcore serious fanatics about this. It really does need to touch the base population of people and plant a seed in their mind that there's a lot more to this. And I think you're doing a great job of that, so it's very commendable.
Thank you for that. And by the way, if I can mention one last thing, the Academy of Paranormal Arts and Sciences.
Absolutely.
That we are promoting for the second annual coming up, awards ceremony for the paranormal researchers and scientists and investigators that really never get any kudos for all the work that they've done for decades, many of them. And a lot of them don't really communicate with one another. So we're having an awards night coming up. It's called the Cosmo Awards.
Oh, awesome.
And it'll be coming up in the fall.
Excellent. Well, we're really looking forward to that. I appreciate all the work that you're doing to put this together. I always like to say that there's so much out there that we're still learning, so many discoveries still to be made, and that we won't know if we don't go. And you've done just that. So you've gone up to these places, you've connected the dots with a lot of these different people and cases, and you're offering something that I think is going to help pave the way for a secure legal future of how we can work together from the civilian arena, the government and military departments, and then what we can do to kind of help bring awareness to this subject. So once again, Michael, appreciate you being here.
Daniel, thank you for all you do.
And we'll see you in the Vortex. If you liked this video, be sure to check out our other content and get connected on our page and social media sites. Every day, new discoveries are being made all across the world and beyond, so let's work together to find out what's next. And remember, we won't know if we don't go. I'll see you in the Vortex.